Reload your bolter and make sure you got your shots for space rabies. We're taking a quick peek at Warhammer 40k Space Wolf. The Warhammer 40k franchise is no stranger to video game adaptations. Ever since Games Workshop opened the floodgates a few years back, Warhammer has been a mainstay on the release list for quite a while now. It's led to some well-made projects as well as some more questionable attempts. You gotta give it to some of these developers though, at least they tried. The main question here is, where does Space Wolf fall on that list? Does it rise to the top as a worthwhile title or fall by the wayside like so many others? Warhammer 40k Space Wolf is a turn-based tactics game developed by HeroCraft, a company that's mostly stayed in the mobile marketplace up until now. Warhammer is no stranger to turn-based tactics, with a lot of games already in that genre. The main difference is how this game incorporates some very light RPG mechanics, as well as a card system. The mixing of card games with other genres has been something that's been popping up more and more over the years. Titles like the roguelike Hand of Fate series mix deck building with third-person combat to fight the deck that players put together. Other games have gotten into the mix as well, such as the fast-paced multiplayer Minion Masters, the self-build dungeons of the Guild of Dungeoneering, or how Prime World Defenders mixes card game mechanics with tower defense. While the Warhammer universe, let alone the 40k side of the franchise, is rich with lore, Space Wolf really takes things light in that respect. The setup is pretty simple. Players take on the role of a squad commander named Valgard Twice-Slain from the Space Wolf chapter of the Space Marines faction from 40k. They end up crash landing on a planet that happens to be infested with the forces of chaos, who are the general bad guys in the Warhammer universe. Trapped, surrounded, and with limited options, it's up to you to pull together whoever's left and use your training not only to get off the planet alive, but also put an end to whatever the Chaos people are doing there. It's nothing super brilliant, and the in-game writing is pretty bare bones at that. Everything is delivered via text box, with the only kind of voice work being used for grunts or yells when characters attack or die. The game likes to use the same clips over and over again throughout the campaign, and there's not much of a variety to them, but at least they aren't all that obnoxious. Mechanically, Space Wolf does do some interesting things to make it less of a strategy game and more of a risk management game. While Valgard starts off on his own, he's quickly joined by a few other Space Wolves, each with their own specialty to use in combat alongside him. There are 5 base characters and a 6th that can be unlocked after completing some side missions, but you can only take 2 of them into a mission with you at a time, for the maximum of 3 characters you'll have control of. Some missions will have NPCs on your side to help out with fights, or as a VIP unit that has to be escorted somewhere, but for the most part, you're going to be outnumbered like crazy. There's 3 main chapters to the game's missions, with each level pitting the wolves against more and more chaos. Enemy AI isn't that bright, and mostly they try to overwhelm you than anything else. Every now and then you'll see them attack and kill each other, which is really useful, but when you have to go up against 40 or so of them in a level, it can still be quite hectic. Completing missions will earn you points that can be used to upgrade Valgard and his team, with some interesting decisions to make. While each team member is their own specific class, be it Herald the Terminator, whose focus is on melee weapons, or Ray that likes his explosives, Valgard gets the option of choosing between 3 separate classes between missions, each with their own upgrades and specific decks. All 3 of these classes have pre-built decks to use during combat, but it's very important to edit them and keep them up to date with new and more powerful cards, or you'll quickly find yourself falling behind. Cards can be gained within a mission by finding a Chapter Forge crate, but that can also be crafted individually or received from packs in exchange for in-game currency. Over time, you'll earn a few packs on your own, which can be opened for free, and cards can be crafted at different rarity levels to determine how powerful they are. Cards can also be upgraded by fusing two weaker versions of the same one together to make a stronger version. It's really the key to keeping your deck optimized for each battle, and you can replay missions to earn more currency or cards if you specifically want to. Space Wolf was originally released as a mobile title with microtransactions for earning cards, but that was removed when it came to the PC. I've read about some people having issues with grinding out cards in order to beat more difficult missions, but I personally never really had that problem. As long as you keep your deck up to date, fuse cards together, and keep your units upgraded, the game comes down to more how you play a mission than to what cards you have access to. While you can build a deck for each of Valgard's classes, be it the Terminator Armor, Power Armor, or Scout, you can't 100% control what card squad mates will be able to use since they have their own individual decks. Upgrading a unit uses a specific amount of points per level and requires Valgard to be at a specific level himself before you can do so. Every time one of your units levels up, you can pick one of two different cards to add to their decks, and you can swap between each one at any time between missions. Leveling them up also increases their health points, which is very important when facing down the numerous forces of chaos. Personally, I found it useful to focus on only upgrading 2 or 3 specific units than trying to keep everybody upgraded. If you try to keep things even across the board, then you might find yourself running into trouble. While always outnumbered, there are a few things players can do in Space Wolf to get the upper hand. Every card has an amount of effort attached to it, and when said card is played, it will apply that effort to whoever played it. There are lots of different kinds of cards, from multiple sorts of one-use weapons to weapons that can be equipped and reloaded with the same kind of weapon card, as well as cards that cover things like movement and healing. Each turn, a unit gets 2 action points and can play 2 cards if they want to. Pretty much any kind of card can be used for movement, but movement-specific cards are the best to use when you have them, since they generally cost the least amount of effort. How much effort a unit has determines their turn order that's shown on the right side of the screen while in a mission. Players can always see how much health, armor, and effort a unit has, and manipulating it correctly is the key to success. Enemies generally go all out on their turns, using as much effort as possible, so a careful usage of cards can give your team more turns quicker. Doing something such as using a 5 effort card to move a unit into position to attack an enemy whose effort is higher than 5 will guarantee that that unit will get another turn with both action points back before their opponent can do anything about it. Every time a unit ends its turn, everyone's effort is reduced, so everyone will eventually get a chance to do something, as long as they're alive, of course. It's very important to keep your unit's effort as low as possible, as often as possible, and to be very wary of when you use high-effort cards to make sure that it's really worth it. More powerful cards generally cost more effort to use, and everything done with a card adds that card's effort to whichever unit used it. If you use an 11 effort card for movement, then that unit gains 11 effort, even though they didn't get to do all that much. So deciding which cards to use when is very important. It can be a good strategy sometimes to just not have a unit do anything for a turn to give them a chance of drawing more useful cards and have a quicker next turn, or discarding high-effort cards to try to get lower-effort ones to use instead of letting them clog up a unit's hand. While keeping an eye on effort is always something you should be doing while in combat as well as when you're building your decks, it's also good to keep an eye out for cards that have chain effects. Some cards are only used in chains and will be used automatically when a unit attacks or is being attacked depending upon what the effect of that chain card is. It will add an extra stipulation to what's going on, like causing enemies to take burn damage for a few turns, or when you get hit, lowering the amount of damage you take. Weapons themselves can also have chains, such as doing extra damages to enemies that aren't at full health or are a specific distance away from the unit that uses it. Utilizing chains as well as managing your effort is what you really gotta be doing, and you gotta wrap your brain around it when it comes to Space Wolf. It does take some getting used to, but it makes the game a crap ton easier once you get a firm understanding of this. Weapons also have accuracy that will affect whether or not they do their full damage or only part of it to give you a bit of randomized chance to manage as well as everything else. There's very little that can be done to influence accuracy outside of Valgard's rage meter. Every time he takes damage, he'll start building rage, which can be used once it's maxed out. Rage not only makes an attack way more powerful than usual, but also has 100% accuracy, and plays a nice little animation to go along with it. Taking damage purposefully in order to build rage can be very risky, but also very rewarding. Something else you really want to keep in mind when you're playing the game is the direction that your units are facing. Weapons can only be fired in front of a unit, and different weapons have different ranges as well as area of effects. Flamers can hit a lot of enemies at one time, as well as rockets and missile launchers, while bolters and most melee weapons focus on single targets. Every time a unit moves, it has to pick the direction it'll face when that move is over. And for some really freaking annoying reason, the developers decided that this is the only way to change direction. Even if you have one of your units standing right next to an enemy, unless you've got a weapon card that can hit around corners, you've got to first turn the unit to face the enemy and then attack them. It's really obnoxious, since turning your units gives them effort for doing basically nothing. But that's the only thing I could think about the combat system that I really didn't like. That and how long a mission can take. Even when enabling the option to speed up enemy movement, missions can easily take half an hour or more to complete due to how slow-paced they are. Some levels are pretty dang big and full to the brim with enemies, which makes progressing sometimes feel slow and arduous. I really enjoy the strategy of not only placing my units correctly, but also having to manage effort and cards at the same time. It gives the game a lot of depth, but it does make it really flippin' annoying when you lose a mission and have to start all over again. Squad members can die in a mission without fully dying, so you can use them again on another mission. But if Valgard dies, it's an automatic game over. Due to this, I found myself favoring the Scout class for him more than the other two, since it focuses on sniper rifles that he can use while far outside of the enemy's range. While players only have control over 3 main units at the start of each mission, you can play a wolf card to call in a cyborg wolf to give you some extra help. These things don't have much health, and you can only have one of a kind on the field at a time, but scouts can call them in without using any effort, and there's no limit to how many times the card can be played per mission if you happen to draw it. Having an extra disposable and replaceable unit that can be called in for free is extremely helpful. Plus, the cyborg wolves just look flippin' awesome. I mean, it's a cyborg wolf in space. What's not cool about that? Overall, Space Wolf is a game with some annoyances here and there, and a bit of a learning curve to get used to, but I found it to be both a fun and interesting game. I love the challenge of puzzling out each mission, as well as optimizing decks to have the right mix of high damage and low effort cards to give my units the best chances to shine while in combat. The game even has an extra challenge mode that can be played to earn more rewards outside of the main campaign, as well as PvP multiplayer, although I've been unable to find anyone online to play it with. There's some DLC available for the game as well if you happen to run through the main content and want to play more. Space Wolf is really a game that you have to know what you're getting into before you play it. I found myself beating my head against the wall very early on until I was able to fully grasp how to use the game's effort system to manipulate turn order, but once that clicked, I didn't have much of a problem playing through each mission on normal difficulty, even with losing a few times here and there. Every loss was another chance to figure out what I did wrong and try to do it right next time. I can't imagine playing this game on a mobile device though, considering how slow its combat is. But for the most part, if you're looking for a new strategy game with a hint of random chance set in the Warhammer 40k universe to add to your collection, you can do a heck of a lot worse than Warhammer 40k Space Wolf. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the game or this video in the comments section. I'm MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later.